Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. Today we're going to talk about balance and why that's important in cheerleading. I mean, I assume you all know that balance is important for cheerleading, but sometimes we don't know how and why and what we need to do to improve our balance to be better for cheer. I'm going to specifically talk about for flyers, but this goes for everybody. All the exercises and the that we talked about, they're good for everybody. It's important for a flyer to have good balance because she's up in the air standing on a human being, usually on one leg. So improving balance and making sure we have that awareness is really important. If you don't know me, I'm Laura Turner, and I'm a physical therapist and a strength coach, and I consult with cheer coaches and cheerleaders and cheer parents to help you improve how you perform and reduce your injuries in cheerleading. And I'm super passionate because I think cheerleading can be a very safe sport if we pay attention. We've gotten a bad rap in the last years because we just kind of push the limits and don't really do the work to maintain what we need to do. And it's a lot of work. So I get questions, when I talk to people on social media, inevitably they tell me, I want to learn some ways to improve my ankle stability, to improve my to help my balance in the air. Or I get people in the clinic that say, I know I have bad balance. I've never had good balance. I can't stand on one leg. I'm going to tip over. And it goes for everyone. Like, you don't necessarily have bad balance. You just maybe need to train your body to move different. So balance is a combination. We need work from the ankle, which provides feedback all the way up through the neural system, which is called proprioception and kinesthetic awareness, kinesthesia. And those give you feedback into your brain that tells your body where it is in space so that it is able to maintain and hold your body relatively still. Now, what I've learned over the years, this is what I was taught in school. Hold still, stand on one leg and don't move. But really what we need is to be able to, we're never all that still, right? If I took a course called Anatomy of Motion with Gary Ward, who wrote a book called What the Foot. It's right here. Fabulous book. I highly recommend it. And it goes over what that feedback is and what our body actually does. So what Gary looked at was people standing on a force plate and looking at where his center of mass was, the people's center of mass was. And it's never fully still. We are never holding completely still. There's this thing called gravity. And that gives us just that little bit. Like our body is constantly course correcting and wobbling in different directions. What happens is sometimes if you're feeling unsteady or you lose your balance, we want our body to have that signal to the brain that says, oh, I'm out of my comfort zone, I'm out of my normal base of support, and I've got to course correct and throw myself off. And that's when you feel that like wobble and loss of balance. So it's important to recognize that when we're training, we're not looking to just get still and to hold tight. We are looking to create a bigger awareness in our center of mass and in our center of gravity that allows us to have that wobble without toppling over. So for cheerleaders, we're looking, do they have that ability to course correct? Is their ankle communicating to their brain and telling them where their body is in space? That's called proprioception. And are they able to feel that and know? That's called kinesthesia. And recognize where they're holding in space. If we have an injury like an ankle sprain, we lose some of that feedback because all that feedback happens in the ligaments from your ankle ligaments, your knee ligaments, all the way up the chain. So if we lose that signal from the ligaments, and we need to have other things to help correct that balance, things like strength. And yes, ankle strength and foot strength is important in balance. Those are really small muscles. So, having the hip be stronger, and there's a lot of research that shows like the lateral hip, the outside, the glute medius, the glute minimus, and the glute max, and your hip rotators all play a big role in controlling your balance and controlling what happens from the ankle all the way up. So just training the ankle isn't going to improve balance. We need to absolutely work on the hip. And guess what? It's easier to work the hip and include some ankle stuff. Things like single leg deadlifts, hip airplanes, um, lunges, and maybe lunges on an uneven surface. That will create some mobility in through the ankle as well as create that stability in the hip. I love step ups. And even step ups that you're just stepping up and bringing the other foot up, that's going to create that mobility in the ankle, some work into the front of the quad and the outside of the knee, as well as into the hip. So you get all of the joints. And then when you can progress that and move your leg in the process, you're challenging your balance with doing a dynamic exercise like a step up. And when we create that mobility in the ankle, and we create that movement, it allows our body to feel that different space so that the ankle's not rolling quite as much. Then our body can recognize, our brain can recognize it doesn't have to go as far. I also do a muscle testing called neurokinetic therapy, which looks at how one muscle is compensating for another and how the brain perceives that compensation for that movement pattern. So in the case of your hip being weak, you might have hip tightness on the inner thigh that's creating a feedback loop to your brain and says, let the inner thigh do the work and pull the knee in, and not, it kind of inhibits the outer hip and the glute medius or the tibia patellata, which is on the side of the hip. Or your hip rotators. They all can, it depends on, where what muscle is inhibited. And so we want to loosen up the muscle that's overworked and tell that to kind of quiet down in conjunction with stabilizing at the outside of the hip and creating a balance. So that word balance again, we create that even pull on either that allows us to have that better feedback to the brain. The brain is really your driver of your balance. And I'm just talking the stuff that happens below the brain, right? Your muscles, your joints, your ligaments, and the feedback loops that it gives you. But then you have your inner ear, which also plays in, and that creates, that comes from the vestibular system. And you also have your eyes that give you feedback. So if there's a disruption in any one of them, that can throw off your balance. For a healthy, relatively healthy, cheerleader that doesn't have any injuries, brain injuries, or vestibular problems, likely it's the feedback is coming from the hip being weak, the ankle needing more mobility and stability, and creating that space that allows us to move. One thing I struggle with when we teach, because I used to do it too. My flyer is like, squeeze your legs, squeeze tight, squeeze your bum, squeeze your thigh, and don't move. Put everything in the center and don't move. Now, we want things to be centered, right? We want things to come in. But when we do that, we then create, that's the tension that we create. And we don't train our bodies to also relax. So on the ground, they need to be able to tighten and squeeze the muscles, but they also need to be able to relax the muscles. And that will create that even pull on either side. And if we come on the ground and we're like, no, I got to be telling that, we want our cheerleaders to practice all the time, right? So if they're coming down and they're always practicing and just holding still and working on just that balance and holding everything without moving, we're not allowing their body to have that little bit of sway and that space around us for the center of gravity to move. So then when they go up in the air, if they're not exactly in that small little space that they've been training, when they go up in the air and they need to move a little bit outside of that, they don't have the feedback to be able to do that. So then they lose their balance and they either go toppling off the back or off the side. All those scary falls that we don't like to see. When I also see a lot of kids, working on playing scorpions and scales and heel stretches. And when they're moving in and out of that range, they're kicking their leg up, but their opposite leg that they're standing on is actually the one that's doing the work. And I see a lot of times because they don't have that control for their balance and that strength in their hip, or maybe the mobility in the hip extension, they're not keeping their knees straight. And then that's when they're starting to lose balance and they can't hold it. Keeping the knee straight is likely coming from the hip, that the hip flexor is tight, or maybe that the hamstrings are not allowing that to fully extend in a stability way. So everything has to kind of work together. And that's really why I like those compound exercises like a deadlift or a hip airplane that uses different muscles, and it uses the whole kinetic chain from the foot all the way up, as opposed to just doing straight up hamstring curls or doing static stretching, which doesn't move your body through its range of motion. Uh, it's important, I think, train everything. We have to be able to do it on the ground to be able to then pick it up in the air. Something I'm going to be talking about in the webinar this coming week is the Y balance test. And that is a test to look and see, can you stand on one leg and move an object, or move your opposite leg in different planes to be able and come back and be able to hold that steady. I think that's a great test for flyers, but it's easy to implement for coaches out of practice, because our motor control system might get thrown off between a test we had, or between lack of sleep we didn't get, or too much coffee and those giant Dunkin' Donuts coffees that they drink. So things might be thrown off a little bit, and they might be off that day. So doing a quick check before you start to build as a precursor is, like you've gone through your warm up and like, hey, let's just check your balance today. Where are you at? And if they're not ready, if they're falling down on the ground, by all means, don't put them up in the air. Use your best judgment and hold them back until they can kind of regroup and get that. It might be a matter of just centering if they're just kind of off. If there's other factors in there, then pay attention to those. But if it's just a matter of they need a little bit of tweaking, you can go through your warm up and create some different stability that will give you a quick course correction, and they are ready to go. So nothing is ever set in stone. Like, just because they come in a little bit wobbly doesn't mean they have to sit out for that practice. But it does mean, like, we have to pay attention, and maybe we need even a little extra hands-on spot. Maybe we need to, slow them, hold them back, go to prep level instead of going extended level, whatever that might be. Or maybe in between stunts, they need to come down and do some balance on one knee, or maybe some hip airplanes, or a Turkish getup, that just kind of resets their system and gets them ready to go. And the key takeaway, there's a lot of things that you can do. It's not just strengthening the ankle. We need to look at the hip. We need to look at core, and what our hip does, what our muscles do, both forward, back, side to side, and in rotation, because all of that plays into what the joints do, stacking up, creating good body awareness, creating good, knowing where your body is in space will do a world of good to help each cheerleader be able to progress and get up in the air. So if you have questions about any of that, please reach out and let me know. My email, laura@movebetterllc.com. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. You can also find me on social media, and all those links are in the show notes below. And I do have an upcoming webinar this coming Friday. So today is Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. So this coming Saturday, at October 5th at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be hosting a free webinar, free for the replays, free all around. Come and join if you can't be there live. I know it's game day, a little bit before than you usually will have to be there, but if you can't be there, it's okay. It'll be recorded. It'll get sent to you if you sign up. And we're going to talk about balance. We're going to talk about the Y balance test. We're going to talk more about the hip airplanes and deadlifts. And we're going to go through some foot yoga exercises to help create that mobility in through the foot and the ankle as well. And then there'll be more. And if you do sign up, you'll get a deep, deep, deep discount for the upcoming masterclass, where we're going to dive even more into ankles and balance and everything you need to know about improving your foot and your ankle. So sign up, come join. And if you have questions ahead of time, please let me know. Thanks so much for listening today. I really appreciate you being here. And I'd love to know what your biggest takeaway is. So definitely reach out if you're watching this on a video. Leave me a comment below, and I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you have a great week. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe it out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to. And as my friend Drew Kelleher said, you're responsible for your own lives.